You're listening to Talking Hoosier Baseball,
a podcast by fans
from the iubase.com website
for anyone wanting more information on the Indiana University baseball program. And welcome back to Talking Hoosier Baseball. We are recording this on Wednesday night, May 19th, the year 2021. I am Chris Feeney, joined tonight by stats guru Cassidy Palmer and the master of the RPI, Carl James. Josh Bennett has the night off. Rumor has it he is packing up for a camping trip, but I guess we'll find that out over the weekend. It's my time for the recap, and we do alternate this every week. And this is a rough one to have to take, I must say. It's not the 3-1 the way I like to throw it. It's the old 1-3 job, but we do have to talk about it. Big series. We looked forward to it. We looked forward to it all year. We sat there and saw that weekend in Michigan and how important it would be. And we knew Friday night was going to be a real big one. Michigan started up, 1-0 on the lead. Colbar decided to take care of that pretty quickly the next inning with a 2-out hit. And it was 2-1, early in the game. It was an early afternoon game. We had the whole night ahead of us. And then all of a sudden, Michigan puts up a 5 spot and a 3 spot, between some unearned runs and some walks. And unfortunately, those unearned runs would become, a theme of the weekend. And after the 3 unearned against Braden Scott, when he came in for Tommy, it was 10-3. It was pretty much a wrap. We did load the bases a couple of times later on in the game, but, we only got one more run out of it. So the final was 10-3 on a Friday. As we went over to game 2, we had probably the most pressure McCade Brown was facing his entire collegiate career, and the kid stepped up. 6 shutout innings, okay? As he took them out in the 7th, we were up 7-0. Kind of figured we'd coast the rest of the way. We were wrong. The next 3 half innings, 14 runs were scored, and we held on 13-8 in game 2. So we had even the series. We had Gabe on the mound on Sunday. I know everybody was pretty confident that at least we would take the series. Again, didn't work out that way. As we got to Sunday, a couple unearned runs here and there. It was 3-0 early. Colopy's home run made it 3-1. Gave us a little bit of hope. Again, some more unearned runs in the 8th. Became 6-1. Just a deficit we couldn't take care of there late Sunday. So we left Michigan losing the series 2-1. Oh, but we have this midweek game that we've convinced Illinois to replay against us because of that Sunday rain, no rain out. So Illinois came in last night on Tuesday. I know I was expecting a pretty early game, maybe not a lot of excitement, with the family and the crowd and the guys and, a Tuesday afternoon game. I think we might have a little bit took them for granted because all of a sudden, they're up 2-0 again, unearned runs. It's 2-0 Illinois. And, we do come back to tie it. But they had 7 pitchers thrown against us. ERAs, a bunch of them in double digits. And inning after inning after the 4th, we could not come up with another run. The game goes to extras. They hit a solo bomb in the 10th off Reese Sharp to take a 3-2 lead. And again, we don't give up. Bottom of the 10th, got a couple guys on, but it wasn't to be. And, that explains a 1-3 weekend when we did not need that. Okay, it drops us lower down in the big standings. It obviously does the teams sit down and take a look at themselves as they're about to face the first place Nebraska Cornhuskers come Friday and Saturday night. All right, a 1-3 weekend, you're still not going to have all negative, especially that one Saturday game. So there were some highlights, and Cassidy's going to start us off with her Hoosier highlights from the weekend.
Thanks, Chris. My Hoosier highlight is going to be from the 8th inning of the Saturday game against Michigan, where the Hoosiers managed to more than bat around, and they scored, 6 runs on 3 hits. I do like being able to manufacture runs thanks to, 3 straight walks and then an RBI HBP and then another walk. Like I that kind of patience to me to work those counts and set yourself up like that for walks. Like it, again, anytime if you can get 4 or 5 walks in an inning, you're pretty well guaranteed to score. And so that really stood out to me as a positive was working through that. The bats did struggle a lot throughout the weekend and then again on Tuesday, but that inning was particularly strong in my mind. Carl, how about you?
For me, I'm actually going to go ahead and choose an event from a game that was lost, which was the midweek last night. Mostly because we're just really seeing him in this role. Grant Machaki coming out of the bullpen, and this, we said, like Chris said, it was a 2-2 game for a long time, and the last 3 innings of the regular portion of the game, the 7th, 8th, and 9th, was Grant Machaki, and he just dominated. He really just did not. He did give up 1 hit and a walk, but they were inconsequential. He struck out 4. He just felt like he was in control that whole game. It was just get in there. They were very quick innings, took care of it, got out. Very impressive. And to add that extra bullpen piece, I think is going to be critical coming into another 4-game week. In this case, a 4-game weekend of pod against some top teams. So that's what I've got on Grant Machaki. Chris, what do you've got in the way of commits and pros?
Thanks, Carl. I like how you mentioned a big-time reliever there with Machaki, and he's definitely a welcome part to this team. Maybe I didn't mention him in the recap. Probably should have. That's my fault. He was really a star of that game coming in and keeping that game where it was. Great point. And Caleb Barriger for the pros picks up his 7th hold already. Okay, I know I wish I could tell you he picked up his 21st win, but no. He picked up his 7th hold to go with his 2 wins. All right, and I know he pitches, late at night in the West Coast, and maybe you don't catch the highlights till Pro Bowl. Maybe it puts out his little tweet, but let me tell you, Barriger, 17 appearances, 13 total innings, because he does come in for a 1-batter, 2-batter appearances sometimes. 0.69 ERA on the season. Okay, 1 earned run for Caleb Barriger for the season. I'll take that all day. He's pitching great, and it's great to match up right there with the Grant Machaki reference. Now, what I have next, I wish we had a lot more of the past 4 games, well, except for Saturday when we had a whole bunch of runs and hits. But we do have plenty of bats in the pros levels that are doing well. We had a week-long stretch about 10 days ago of Hoosier homers, and now we're on another 8-game-in-a-row stretch, thanks to Mr. Alex Dickerson coming off of the IR. He was on a 10-day IR, I believe it was, with a shoulder. He comes back with a 3-for-4 night out in Cincinnati, putting up his 4th bomb in a year, double, 3 RBIs. So Dickerson's back, and it's good to see. And then speaking of coming back, we also had Kyle Schwarber return to Wrigley Field with the Washington Nationals. He got a great ovation from the Chicago Wrigley faithful. Even from the Cubs. I mean, he was getting like hugs and high fives from the players on the field, which I thought was really cool. He hit a bomb in his return, and then he hit another bomb later in the series, which gives him 6 for the season. So Kyle's starting to heat up, and I really liked how the Cubs fans showed him the love. To think about what that guy pulled off for them, to really work hard after he got hurt that year, month after month after month, as his team was going through the season, to be able to play in the World Series for them, and to be able to be that DH in those Cleveland games where they pretty much won all of them. They were down 3-1, so maybe they won a game at Wrigley. Maybe they didn't. I don't even remember, but every time they played in Cleveland, Kyle got to hit, and he was a big part of that winning run too, to win it. So good to see Kyle return to Wrigley. Hopefully the bats return to the Hoosier lineup against Nebraska and Ohio State. 3 runs in 2 games, real disappointing, especially the Illinois pitchers. I thought we were going to crush those guys, but hopefully they're looking up at their MLB and minor league, alumni, and seeing how they're crushing, and it leads to a big weekend of offense. I really hope that's what happens, because we need it. It's now or never. I know there's another weekend after this, but if the bats don't hit this weekend, I don't know how much the Maryland weekend matters. So, Cass, what do we have in the way of stats from the weekend?
Well, I do have stats for the weekend. I have not been able to add the Tuesday game in yet. Tuesday in the middle of the day during the work day. It's hard to keep up with everything, so that one's still a little still got a little processing to do. But I do have some numbers from the weekend, and something that stood out, and I don't think I noticed it standing out until Austin Render said something on one of the radio calls. But it did seem like the bats were working full counts fairly frequently. And it actually was a little bit more frequent than normal for the season up to that point. The team had 20 plate appearances that went to a full count. And when you average that out to a per game number, it was actually 1.5 plate appearances extra per game that went to that full count. And so that with averages like this, 1.5 plate appearances is quite a bit of a jump. And that actually has kind of a mixed bag with these full counts. On the weekend, 40% of the 40% of the at bats ended out, but 35% of the plate appearances ended in a walk. Like that's really good to see. And the batting average was in full count at bats was 231. That's a little below the 255 that the team was sitting on the season in full count at bats, but not horribly so. Still passable, especially when you're looking at slightly small numbers. So I'll give that, but it stood out that they were seeing more pitches. And along with that, I was kind of curious to look at plate appearances and at bats with 2 strikes, regardless of how many balls were thrown. And with that, the Hoosiers actually had 7 plate appearances with 2 strikes in a 3-game series. And this was 4 plate appearances higher than average each game. The average for the weekend was +4 2-strike plate appearances per game. Now that is humongous in this case, mainly because of the difference in the approach with 2 strikes. I mean, coming up to this weekend, the Hoosiers were batting .360 when they did not have 2 strikes. With 2 strikes, that drops to .192. And you've got 4 more of those 2-strike plate appearances. That can make the huge difference. Everything, all of the walks drop, the walk rate drops from 12% without 2 strikes to just 9% with 2 strikes. Of course, the number of pitches goes up when you've got 2 strikes, because that's where you're getting all the guys fouling off 5 straight is in the 2-strike at bats and plate appearances. But in those 2 strikes, 2 out batting average is just 167. And again, I've said it over and over and over, this is a 2-out team. And so if you're adding some more of those 2-strike counts in those critical at bats, that can be the difference in the game. Without 2 strikes, the team bats .400 with 2 outs. That is such a crazy difference. And it's not even really a small numbers thing. They've got 210 at bats with 2 outs and 2 strikes. And they've got 160 without 2 strikes, with 0 or 1 strike. That's not really in small numbers territory for a college baseball season. anymore. And that is a noticeable difference. And so that really stood out to me, was those extra 2-strike at bats and plate appearances. Yeah, it does lead to some more full counts where we do have a decent shot at walking, but in general, the more we can minimize those 2-strike plate appearances and at bats, the better this offense rolls. And so while I do like seeing working pitchers as much as possible, the numbers say we want to avoid 2 strikes when at all possible. Carl, what do you have on the Big Ten race and the bigger postseason picture?
The power rankings right now have Nebraska very clearly in the number 1 slot. Maryland has now come into the number 2 slot in my power rankings, driven by the fact that Maryland is now number 1 overall in the Big Ten in ELO, in Warren Nolan's ELO calculations. So Warren Nolan really likes what Maryland has been doing lately, clearly based on his algorithm. Michigan comes in at 3. Indiana has slid to 4, barely, because Iowa is pretty much right there with the same golf score at number 5. And then goes to Ohio State, Illinois, and then just kind of goes from there. From a comparison perspective, I really don't like looking at pods, which is what's coming up. It's so hard to predict a pod. It's just, you have weird mashups of teams. They can decide in their doubleheader days which pitchers they're going to throw. There's a lot of weird things about that, and I'm going to get into that in the preview. But if you look at it from the perspective of, let's just say 2-2 across the board in the pod, which is somewhat fair given that IU is at home. Nebraska is on the road, but they are the better team. And then we'll just say Ohio State's into that mix. Boy, this still comes down to being extremely tight, with Indiana and Michigan tied at 28 and 16, but they are a game and a half behind Nebraska at 29 and 14. So the key thing here is if Indiana can do some damage to Nebraska this weekend, and by damage, I mean win both games against Nebraska, that brings it back into the realm of possibility. We know that's a big, tall ask, but it's not impossible. And realistically, Maryland, Nebraska, Michigan, and Indiana all have a legitimate shot to come out of these 2 weekends as Big Ten champion. And there's plenty of scenarios that fit all of those. And I think it's going to be really critical that there's also a chance that somebody's going to come out of this next 2 weeks in really bad shape. And that team is probably going to find themselves not at interregional. I think at this point, we're looking at 3. The focus on the RPI based on the results that the committee put out from the hosting perspective shows that they're still following RPI to some degree. These teams are all playing each other. So even though their RPIs are not in that necessary range at the moment, I think 3 of the teams will have a qualifying RPI, which I say is in that 60 rank range, which is enough that they can say, yeah, that RPI is good enough to consider them. And given their schedule, we're going to go ahead and let 3 Big Ten teams get in. I really hope that's the case. But Indiana is going to have to show that they're one of those top 3, which is going to require winning a decent chunk of games over these last 7. All right, well, now it's time to hand out some hardware. Chris, who gets this week's red belts?
Thanks, Carl. We got, first of all, the Alex Dickerson Award, and I am glad he's back on the field. Never liked hearing he was out on that injured list, but he did come back in a big way. For the Alex Dickerson Award, I'm going Kip Hoosiers. Okay, he had a 3-for-5 game, a 2-for-4 game, plenty of walks all weekend. 4 RBIs one day. For a team that didn't hit much, except for that, 1 game, Kip spread his around, and as an impressive freshman as he's been, didn't start the season in the starting lineup. Once he's got there, they can't get rid of him. I know his defense has something to do with that too, but he really has played well. Kip definitely earned one this weekend for the Alex Dickerson Award red belt. For the Joey Donato red belt, I got to say this was this was the biggest start of McCade Brown's career, and he stepped up, and I'm really glad he did. Okay, it became even bigger when he took the mound and we'd already lost the first game. There's a whole different story when you're up in that series 1-0 on the road, and he didn't have that comfort. He didn't have that little bit of net in the back of his mind that, I don't have to do what I need to do, and he stepped up. Okay. At times I question, McCade makes me a little nervous. I'm not going to lie. I'm not sure exactly what we're going to get. He stepped up in a huge way. I know the final line says 3 runs, 3 hits, 300. The first 6 innings, shutout ball. Okay. He had 6 Ks over that time. I don't think there was another 6 innings in the entire series where they didn't score. All right. And he put them all in a row while we were building our lead. And McCade Brown, by far, to me, earns this Joey Donato Red Belt Award. Now, the next one was hard for me because I didn't see the catch. I had to admit that early on. I wasn't able to catch Richardson's catch in the 9th on Saturday. I heard it. Austin Render did a hell of a job calling it. And I wasn't able to see Morgan Colopy giving up his body out in right field, making an amazing grab in a game that we really, really needed. So we have to give Cole credit for this one. I kind of deferred to him, who he actually not only saw the one on TV, but he was at the game covering the Illinois game. And so for the Tony Butler Award, Red Belt, we are going to give it to Morgan Colopy. Okay. Now, I know Grant, he, 70%, of his covers water, the rest is scratches. Morgan Colopy gives up his body, makes a huge catch. Plus, Carl says it was the best catch. So there you go. For this team, we're grateful to have Morgan. Absolutely, the bat and the glove. I definitely did not expect him to be a center, not a centerpiece, but the main right fielder. I did not think that, and he's really played well. And he's got quite the rocket out there too. Some people started running on him there for a while. He hosed a few down. We haven't seen him run in a while either. So Colopy's definitely solid, the outfielder. So there's your 3 belts. We have Kip Hoosiers for the Joey Donato, for the Alex Dickerson, McCade Brown for the Joey Donato, and for the Tony Butler Award, Morgan Colopy. And with that, we're going to go back to Carl. This is not a team preview, but a pod preview. Bloomington hosting. What do you got, Carl?
All right, Chris. The Bloomington pod is going to go over 4 days. IU plays in all 4 at the BART. There will be 2 games played each on Saturday and Sunday, but those games, the extra games, will feature Ohio State versus Nebraska. So I'm going to kind of roll down the Indiana games in this, starting at 8 p.m. on Friday night. This will be on the Big Ten Network. For Indiana, Tommy Summer, despite having some issues this past weekend with a fingernail, that has apparently been resolved, and he is good to go for Friday night. And he will be facing off against Nebraska's left-handed Cade Povich, who, get this, we've heard this before, is the reigning Big Ten pitcher of the week with a 2.74 ERA. Now going back this year, Indiana has, in 11 weeks, Indiana has produced the Big Ten of the pitcher of the week 3 times and has faced the Big Ten pitcher of the week twice. In both of those cases, Jack Lifrig from Minnesota on April 23rd, and this past Saturday against Cameron Weston from Michigan, the Big Ten pitcher of the week took an L against the Hoosiers. So the hope here is that the Hoosiers can hang another L on a Big Ten pitcher of the week. Won't be easy. The last time they saw him was not that long ago, and in 4 innings, really wasn't much. I think Cole Barr got a home run against him, but that was pretty much it. Left-handed pitcher really had our hitters not thinking straight. Now, the good thing was our hitters did manage to run up his pitch count. And granted, it was the rain that ran him at that point, but his pitch count was still pretty high. And we're probably looking at only 6 innings out of him anyway. So I'm not sure exactly what the strategy is going to be. But that's another game against a really tough lefty, which the Hoosiers have had a ton of. If the way I look at the way these teams are laid out, though, that should be the last left-handed starter that Indiana sees for the weekend.
How about ever? Can we do ever?
Boy.
I was waiting for ever. The last one, ever.
I haven't quite looked into Maryland yet, so I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
But on Saturday, 6:30 p.m., this game is on ESPNU. McCade Brown will be facing off against a righty for Nebraska. Nebraska's playing a doubleheader, so it could be either Shea Shanneman or Chance Roach. Roach has come off a very good game in his last performance. So Shanneman's at 5.47 ERA, Roach at 4.55. So that's Nebraska. Nebraska, two hitters I want to focus on. Max Anderson is their best overall hitter with a 340 batting average. Luke Roskam produces the power, 8 home runs. This is a balanced offense, though. There's good bats 1 through 9. They play a lot of small ball. They put pressure on the bases. They put pressure on defenses. This is where Indiana's defense has got to find itself to play against a team that pushes the way this Nebraska team does. Well, Sunday turns over to Ohio State. Indiana would love another crack at Ohio State. 4 losses in Columbus. That was a really, really ugly week. So a chance to get some vengeance there. Indiana will be sending Gabe Bierman Sunday night at 5 p.m. This one's on BTN against Ohio State. Again, Ohio State's got a doubleheader, so they will be throwing either right-handed pitcher Garrett Burnham, 4.41 ERA, or right-handed pitcher Jack Neely at a 5.62 ERA. The pod will conclude Monday night at 6 p.m. This is also on the Big Ten Network. The coach has announced that John Meduno will be getting the ball for the Hoosiers in that game. Ohio State is most likely to throw right-handed pitcher Will Finning, who has pitched a start typically in most of their 4-game weekends, including the one against IU. He's got a 5.68 ERA. He doesn't tend to go extremely deep. Now for Ohio State, Cade Kern leads their hitters with a 356 average. Connor Pohl provides the power, 11 home runs. Not quite as balanced as Nebraska. Ohio State really does hang their hat on pitching. This is, but Indiana will hopefully not be going through quite a scenario as they did. The good news is most likely it's going to be Nebraska that's going to be facing Seth Lonsway. So that should be a big positive. That's one bullet Indiana gets to dodge. They do have to face Cade Povich, but they do not have to face Seth Lonsway. I intend to be covering all the games for IUBase.com. So I am looking forward to getting a chance to see Seth Lonsway pitch and hopefully beat Nebraska. So, all right. Well, let me switch to our other view here so we can see everybody. Now's our time for our roundtable. The Hoosiers have clearly hit a rough patch for the second time this season. I guess the question I have for the group is, can we expect a bounce back as strong as the one that happened last time? Can that start on Friday? Cass, get us started.
I'm going to, so starting with the first question, we can expect, I think we can expect a bounce back. We've seen it before, and I think we will see it again. History says that will start on Friday because we are facing the reigning Big Ten pitcher of the week, and every time we've done that, we've hit well. So tradition says yes, it will start on Friday. But I think for me, the most encouraging thing for the pod from the bat perspective is that we will then be facing pretty much just right-handed starters. That gives me a lot of hope because that's the difference maker, I think, for these bats right now. I'm hoping.
Well, I do a lot of work with people trying to change, right, and trying to bounce back and do, some recovery work and what I do for a living. And what I always try to explain to people is, like, if your brain hasn't seen it yet, it's really hard for the brain to believe it's going to happen again, right? You need to produce positive thoughts and be able to see it and let your brain know that it's possible that it can happen again. It just happened. I really think it's so important what we dealt with after the massacre in Columbus, and that the bounce back and what they did. I tell people, basically on a daily basis, you have to train your brain into seeing something new. If all it knows is failure and despair and mistakes and letdown and shame and all that, it's all it's going to know. Well, guess what? This team knows that it can make a mistake and bounce back and throw up a 3-1 in a pod that maybe people didn't expect it. So I absolutely think it can start on Friday. It can start this weekend. I didn't see this Michigan thing coming, and I don't think they did either. I certainly didn't see Illinois coming. That was just totally out of whack. But hey, this team very closely, Brain, has produced and seen and knows it can happen. We don't have to pull out bells and whistles and fancy slogans. They've seen it. Their brain is ready for it. And these bats are going to bounce back. I really believe they will. I have a feeling we're in for some shootouts this weekend. I know the pitching might not say that. If you looked at the numbers and who's going to be pitching, I got a feeling we're in for some doozies, and I'm excited for it. And I'll take another 3-1. Thank you very much. Carl, what about you?
There's so many things that are contradictory, because look at last night's game. I mean, if there's one thing that I felt that this team from an offensive perspective has been consistent on, is when you get to the back end of a team's pitching selection, they start to light them up. And now, don't get me wrong, they got hits yesterday. They got, I think, 9 hits, and in fact, they almost doubled up Illinois in hits. Mm-hmm. But it was a bunch of singles that were mostly spread out, and not collecting a lot of walks, and not really hitting the ball hard. Now, I thought that last shot that Grant had that ended up in the center fielder's glove, I thought he hit that really hard. I was kind of hoping that was going to go a little bit farther, but it was just like, couldn't quite break through against the type of pitcher that they tend to break through with. But then again, you know what? This is the first midweek they've actually played competitively, the only midweek for the whole year. And we saw this a couple times in midweeks in 2019 that we were just scratching our heads. The Wright State midweek, that was the one that really comes to mind. It was just, oh my goodness, it just did not feel like this was the team that we know that's out here playing. In the Michigan series, I mean, it was competitive most of the way. There were positives in every game. You kind of double up that, Tommy literally got hurt, and then they had to throw in Braden Scott, and that was typically a scenario where they expect Tommy to kind of get out of his own jam, and it was just like, yeah, he's hurt, he can't do that. So, and then you have a situation in which you didn't give the bullpen a clean inning, and Braden didn't quite have it at that particular moment, and it just kind of, I didn't really feel bad about that. There wasn't a ton I really felt bad about in the Michigan series. Michigan is a heck of a team. Mm-hmm. And they were, how they hit Gabe, Gabe pitched, I thought, very well in that game. Mm-hmm. And they were just really good when they, to take advantage of what little Gabe gave them. And then Gabe still kept going and kept going and kept going. So there was a lot of positives.
Way longer than I thought it would.
Yeah, Michigan played really well. I didn't really feel horrible losing that series. I felt horrible losing that game last night. So the making it a total 1-3 weekend. But the good news is the way that a lot of people look at it, they actually kind of say the week starts on Monday. So yesterday was the start of the new week. And if it turns out to be a 4-1 week, I'll be very happy.
I'm in. I'll change my pick to 4-1 right now.
I mean,
no, I'm not going to.
I'm not going to pick that, but it's not impossible. They're at the BART. This team plays well, typically at the BART. Yep. I think a couple midweeks aside, for the most part, this team plays really well at the BART. They don't have any double headers. I think that is a huge advantage. Yes. Playing one game a day is an advantage that the rest of the teams don't have. Now, granted, that's the situation Rutgers was in, and it sure didn't help them when they played it that way. But, I'm wanting them to take advantage of this and say, you know what, one game at a time. You've got I'm feeling better about the bullpen. It's one thing after yesterday's game. I mean, Illinois can hit; they can swing the bat, and the fact that how well all of those bullpen players did, Bothwell, Meduno, Machaki. I mean, even Sharp. I mean, yeah, he had the home run that ended the game, but it was one pitch, one hit on one pitch. The rest of the time, he looked solid.
I think that's just being honest, though, man. There's 7 games left, right?
Yeah.
And 5-2 and 2-5, sure, either one could pop up, right, when you roll the dice. But I think this team knows it's fought long and hard to get to the spot where, okay, what are we, a game and a half back with 7 to play? We were a game and a half back with like 20 to play before, and we put ourselves in this position to be available to win the conference. Even if second in the conference is, I have to think a lock for the regional. And I don't think, well, obviously we know we can't host anyway. And so just get to second in the conference if you have to. Lock yourself in that trip to the dance. And if 5-2 does that, no matter who you're playing, that's fine. But you know what? Take Nebraska, take these 2 right here. Take these 2, the most important 2. I understand your power ranking and what is it? Warren Sharp really loves these Terrapins. Well, we'll have a chance against them next weekend, and getting 1 on the road against them, if they're that good, should shine for us also. If they're really looking towards these RPIs, but I really think the bounce back ability of this team has been shown. It's something I really wanted to see. I was worried about it. We saw it. So, you know, Mercer says a lot. Be where your feet are. I might steal that from him sometimes at work, and I'll be honest about that because it kind of goes into play with what I do. And just be where your feet are. Here it is. Win it, right? Win it. Control what you can control. We hear him say it all the time. Yeah. He's a master motivator. These kids will be ready. They'll be ready under the lights on Friday. I know that. Well, I guess that'll do it for this week's episode of Talking Hoosier Baseball. You can read up on Indiana baseball program at iubase.com. You can follow us on Twitter at CUAtTheBart or at iubase17. I got to do better with Instagram. I know I'm slacking a little bit, but you can follow that at iubase. And you can subscribe to the Talking Hoosier Baseball channel on YouTube by hitting the subscribe button to check out some video podcasts, game clips, and media availabilities. And if you're a listener to the podcast, please fill out the thing with the 5 stars and leave a review. We've been doing this for years. We don't know why. It helps feed the algorithm. Please. We like to move up on the charts. No, we really don't care. But please feed the algorithm. For Carl James and Cassidy Palmer, I'm Chris Feeney, and soon we'll all be there to see you at the park.